Hey, good morning. Happy Sunday. Tim from Alpha Trading coming at you with this week's market overview and stocks to watch for trading and investing next week. And there's a lot to go over, so I'm just going to hop right into it. Again, I'm going to do the full video for everyone this week. Likely going to be some changes coming up with my activity in social media and with Alpha Wolf Trading in general. I should have something to announce in the next week or so. But for now, let's take a look at the markets and then let's take a look at my list of stocks to watch for next week. All right, so GDX, GDXJ, gold. I have all of those up here this week. And look, I'm not a gold bug. However, we do have a pretty bullish formation on GDX, GDXJ, and gold. It looks like, we've kind of came up into an area of resistance. We broke through actually a little bit, and now we've been consolidating and pulling back. So, the markets towards the end of the week, last week, were showing a little bit of weakness. We have a lot of indexes that are right at their 200-day moving average, and so far that's acting as resistance. You have a lot of people that are looking for a double bottom retest of the recent lows. I don't know that we go all the way down and retest, but I could certainly see us pulling back after the tremendous run we've had, and we're doing it right at areas of potential price resistance. So that's definitely something that could be take into consideration. And even though I'm not a gold bug, it doesn't mean that there can't be an opportunity for a short-term trade in that space. So keep an eye on that. JNUG and Nugget also looking fairly bullish. So keep an eye on gold and gold names. If the markets start to roll over, that is considered to be somewhat of a safety trade. It's above a rising 50-day moving average, above the 200-day moving average gold. So, interesting, worth keeping an eye on. IBB came up right into the 200-day moving average, having some real resistance here at the 110 area, pulled back a little bit. Now we're approaching an area of potential support. Could we come back and test the 50-day as support? That's possible. And then if we lose the 50-day, where does our support then come? Then where do we have potential support? And that could be somewhere around the $100 mark, where we've got a little bit of price support right there at that nice round number. So we'll see how things act there. IWM, which has had a big move, broke above this trend line and has been consolidating, but still considerably below the 200-day moving average. We still have what could be considered a lower high. So a little bit concerning there on IWM. IYT, transportation, same thing, below the 200-day moving average. And if this winds up being as far as we go for now, you're looking at a lower high. So a little bit concerning there on transportation. JNUG, like I said, kind of a nice little bullish formation on JNUG. That's the junior miners, gold miners, and then Nuggets is these are the triple levered. So if you play these, be pretty careful. You got to understand triple levered. All right, so but above the 200-day, and look, pulled back and it's trying to hold the 200-day. So you actually have pretty decent area to trade against on JNUG and Nugget. QQQs, right up into the 200-day, pulling back, right up into this little trend line. We'll see what happens next week. We've got some big names reporting. We've got another, Activision, and we'll look at that in a second. But NVIDIA is reporting. We've got some big names, pretty broad range of companies that are being that will be reporting next week. We'll see how that plays out. But some names that I'm very interested in. We'll see how it plays out. SMH, did try to take out the 200-day, but has broken back below. But I think this is probably one of the most critical indexes to keep an eye on. Remember, this one led for a long time in the bull run, in the bull market. And if this one can take over the reins again, that would be pretty interesting, right? So I'm not suggesting that that's going to happen, but I think this is a very important index to keep an eye on. Looking for it to, well, let's see what NVIDIA does. Let's see what this sector does. But we did kind of put in a higher high, so recent higher high, right? So I mean, we still got some work to do to get back up to all-time highs, but does have a pretty impressive looking bullish chart. Let's see if that follows through. SPY right up to the 200-day, pulling back, right? So the 200-day acting as resistance. TVIX volatility really came out of the markets, but if the markets start to roll over, right? So I just saw news that I guess the government or the administration and Congress have stalled on talks for keeping the government open. So we could wind up shutting the government again next week. I don't know how the markets will react to that, but probably not a great thing. TVIX, potential area of price support that we could see a bounce from, right? So in this, I mean, pulled right back to an area of price support. Let's see if we get a bounce there, but that could be a short-term trading opportunity. TZA, same thing. This is a 3-time bear small cap ETF, and it pulled back to the 50-day, or to the 200-day, I'm sorry, and bounced. And this is also right at an area of potential price support. Looks like $10 is something that you could trade against, right, as potential support. You break below 10, then you look to get out, but if it's going against you. But TZA, worth keeping an eye on if we see a pullback in the small caps. USO oil. So we do have an event next week, some kind of an OPEC event, I believe, next week. That could move oil. It's kind of been in consolidation mode. It's bumping up against this trend line here. Let's see what happens with oil. You kind of got maybe a reverse head and shoulders pattern there. It's worth at least keeping an eye on oil. UUP, the dollar, actually got a little bit of a bounce last week. If that dollar strength continues, I think that would be actually bad for stocks. But let's see how it plays out next week. Kind of got a little double bottom W pattern going here on the dollar, but if the dollar pulls back and weakens a little bit, I think that could be good for equities. We'll have to see how it plays out. Actually, it could be good for commodities, right? If we get a weak dollar, strong dollar kind of hurts the commodities, and we saw a bit of a pullback this week. So, all right, XHB. Home builders consolidating right below the 200-day moving average. Let's see what XHB. I mean, those stocks I think have had a very nice bounce. We are coming up into probably a better selling season for housing names, but I think they've already made a pretty decent move. We'll have to see how that plays out. It's a decent sector to keep an eye on, but not one of my focus sectors. Building materials. Pulling back, testing the 50-day as potential support. We lose that 50-day. That could be problematic for the building materials. XLE, pulling back, testing the 50-day. That's the energy names. Let's see what they do next week. But I do think there are some names within the energy sector that are still pretty compelling. Financials had a tremendous run, pulling back a little bit. Some concerns about Deutsche Bank and how that all plays out. That could impact the space. Big, thick stocks, typically. We had a regional bank that did a merger. That was good for the space, but at the same time, we've got some potential headwinds out there. Like I said, usually big, thick stocks. So I think this sector probably needs some consolidation time. Industrials, right up into the 200-day. We've got John Deere reporting this week and a couple other, I think, industrial names. That sector could be in focus. Did break that little trend line there. XLP, consumer staples. So, we've got Coca-Cola, I think, is reporting next week. Pepsi is reporting next week. This has been one of those sectors that has actually held up fairly well. Nice bullish pattern above the 50-day, above the 200-day. Could see some follow through in that sector this week. And it's considered a safety trade, right? So could benefit also if the markets roll over. This could be a space where you see money flow. Utilities actually have had a pretty nice bounce as well. Also considered a safety trade, and that seems to be grinding higher. So we'll see what happens with utilities. XLV Healthcare above the 200-day, above the 50-day, broke over this little trend line, consolidating. Sector that still I think looks fairly interesting. Consumer discretionary did try to take out the 200-day, pulling back a little bit. Let's see if this 105 area holds as support. XOP, that's oil and exploration, pulling back. I mean, not a good week last week for oil and exploration, but maybe we come back and we test this somewhere around the 25, 26 area. See if that holds as support for a bounce. And then retail actually kind of flagging out here right at the 50-day as well. So look, I mean, we're kind of in this holding pattern. Got a lot of stuff, a lot of deadlines that are coming up that could impact the markets. We could just see more consolidation, or we may see a little more weakness and pull back until we get some clarity on some of these things, like the trade deal with China and the government shutdown and all this other stuff. But with all that going on, so first let me just talk about last week's stocks to watch. I just want to bring something up real quick. I spent about 3 hours working on Maxwell last weekend. I was very excited about. I knew I was going to take this stock for a swing come Monday morning. It was in my head. I had my trade plan set. I was going to take it because I felt as though they had some potential catalysts coming up. I was excited about the technology. Like I said, spent 3 hours researching this company, going through SEC filings and all this stuff, right? And I was excited. I was super excited. And then what happened? I wake up Monday morning and they're being bought out by Tesla. So I did not get to participate in this 51% move. Just ironic. I mean, the company's been around for a long, long time. And, I come across it, I go through it, and they just happen to be bought out the day that I'm planning on starting a position. Just, that happens, right? Kind of wasted time on my end, but that's part of the trading game and investing game. EOLS was on the list, nice 45% move. Actually, it was higher throughout the week. That created a nice trading opportunity. Cody, I mentioned it last week. What was the other makeup company that reported good numbers? I thought maybe these guys might do as well, and they did, and it had a nice pop. So, I did not catch this trade actually, even though it had a really nice move. But I think this is one to definitely keep an eye on. Now, they could do a capital raise. They have a lot of debt. They could do a capital raise, and then you wait to see where that capital raise price. It's a thick stock, so it's more, but it's breaking a trend line. This could be a trend reversal. You look for a pullback to an area of potential price support, maybe a double bottom test. But it looks like you got a new CEO here who's turning the company around. And I think you continue to keep an eye on this. AAC had a nice little move last week, but there were some good movers. And then, a lot of these stocks like GLW, big thick stock, more of a swing long-term hold. I love this thing at $30 or less for a long-term hold, but don't know if I still keep an eye on these, even though for the week there's some names that have pulled back and I'm not interested in. SGMO was one that had an event this week, and I mentioned it, look, you could trade this thing into the event, don't hold it through the event, and here's why. 38% drop on that bad boy. So, some pretty good movers in last week's list, and I think some that you still want to keep an eye on for potential trading opportunities or investment opportunities. Next week, economic calendar, we got a lot of stuff coming up. Retail sales, consumer price index, right? NFIB, small business index. We got a lot of economic data to absorb next week. So keep an eye on that. Could impact the markets. And then let's take a look real quick at the stocks that are reporting earnings. We've got some that are of more interest to me than others, of course. Let's see. Twilio. I'm very interested to see how they report. Activision. Akamai, I think, is another one. Want to keep an eye on. Under Armour, I kind of am interested in that. Shopify. Activision, I think, is a really big deal, right? EA Sports popped crazy last week at the end of the week because of this free-to-play game that they came out with. But Activision, could be. We'll have to see what their numbers, but that chart is not looking great. I'd love to get it down below $40 for a long-term hold starter. Teva, I think, is kind of interesting. Let's see. SunPower, Cisco, of course, NVIDIA, Pepsi, John Deere. Let's see. Applied Materials, I think that's important too. So we've got, and MGM, definitely MGM. Got my eye on that one. So we've got some big names reporting next week. All right. So let's go ahead and hop right into the list of stocks to watch for next week. Some of these now, make sure that I point this out here. If the stock is below the 50-day, the 200-day moving average, there's higher risk in the stock, right? Make sure you check to see when their earnings are coming up. There are stocks that are my long-term holds or swing portfolio that I hold through earnings, right? Because I'm looking at a longer-term time frame of being invested, and then there's the ones that are just the day trading opportunities, maybe heading up to an earnings calendar event, or just a potential catalyst, right? So the ones below the 50-day and 200-day, higher risk. Keep that in mind. All right, UTSI, so 10% owner adding to their stake, buying 9 million shares at $5.35 from another shareholder that's selling their entire 22% stake. This requires CFIUS approval and People's Republic of China approval. This has had a pretty amazing run. Now, it is breaking this trend line, right? It had a nice pop and then consolidated, and now we're popping again. Now, this is the fourth day of the move right into the 200-day moving average. I wouldn't chase it here, but, on a pullback to, say, 350, 340, 325, somewhere in that area, 335, might be worth taking a little stab at. I think it's interesting that they're buying these shares at $5.35. Now, this same 10% owner raised their stake in January, paying $4.54 per share. So, interesting company, China name. You got to be a little skeptical because it's a China name, and they report 3.8. But looking for maybe a pullback. I'm thinking about taking a little higher risk swing in this name on a pullback to 340, 350, 325, somewhere in that area. See if that area holds a support. Now, this may gap up on Monday. The news actually came out February 4th, so it's not new news, but I did see Benzinga Pro reshuffling that news this weekend. So, pretty interesting look there on UTSI, higher risk swing. Egan. So this is one of my old favorites. Low float stock, 7.9 million shares in the float. Had an amazing run, and then they missed a couple of earnings, gap down, and kind of been in consolidation mode. Got all the way down here to 530 and change. And then reported great earnings and had a big pop. Now, this could get a gap fill up to 1260 or so. Could get a red to green move. I mean, this has had multiple day runs, right? So, back here it had a couple of days. So, maybe a red to green, right? Let's see. We close at 1099. I'd love to see this thing pull back to about 1050 or so, take it for an entry, and then see if we, get a pop back over the prior day's candle and maybe come up and fill this gap into the 1260 area. Or you could just wait until it breaks back over 1130 or so and take it on a break over 1130, but I'd rather have it on a red to green type pull. It was a good earnings beat. That was big volume that it traded on Friday. I look for a potential continuation there. NK, so, this is a little biotech that had some volume on Friday. I mean, not significant volume, but it did have a little volume boost on Friday. Coming up into the 50-day moving average, kind of have a base here. Could be a little base breakout. See if you get red to green follow through. Maybe you get a test up into the 170 area. I'd take some off there, and then maybe you get a 2 test, right? So red to green, NK, potential day trading opportunity below a declining 50-day, below a declining 200-day. Long-term trend line is lower, but possible double bottom bounce on NK. Just a day trading opportunity. IPCI, saw some guys on Friday talking about this one. Penny stock play, right? Above the 50-day, and some of you may say, man, penny stocks, I don't know, who wants to play penny stocks? Well, I'll tell you, I like playing penny stocks. I'll play anything if I think there's an opportunity to make a little money, right? And I'll show you why in a second. But the IPCI flirting with this 38 cents, 3.2 million shares trading hands on Friday. Got some day trading guys kind of watching this name. You break out of this 40-cent area, maybe you get a 50-cent test, right? 54 cents, somewhere in that area. I mean, that's a pretty decent percentage move. Just looking for a quick little scalp trading opportunity if you get some follow through in the volume. Worth keeping an eye on IPCI. Now I'm going to show you guys something that I bought, and some of the guys that are in the chat room know I bought it, know I've been holding this, but NGTF, and I bought this with I had an average about 21 cents in this thing. Very interesting story. They kind of have a MJ Munchies division, right? So they're kind of in the cannabis space. They've got the rights to Half Baked, which is kind of a interesting name for edibles, and they also they're coming out with a new Better For You nighttime ice cream, right? So I thought the concept was very interesting. It was a kind of a higher risk lotto play. It's a penny play, but look at what this thing did on Friday. 2.6 million shares. Huge spike. I did take some off the table. I still have some because I think this could actually be a very interesting long-term play, but you got to take money off the table when you get this type of a move, right? So that was a high-risk penny play. It really was not a stress trade at all, but look at that return. Pretty nice return. So that's why I like playing pennies. I know some people, they're afraid of them, but they can pay off. All right, FET, oil and gas equipment name. Even though the sector is struggling a little bit, these guys reported I think they reported good earnings. Got a pop above the 50-day moving average. It's got an interesting looking setup here on the daily, right? We had this nice little break above the 200-day or 20-day. Then you consolidated for a while, built out a base, and we got a little bit of a break with 49 on Friday. Potential continuation, looking for maybe a red to green, pull back to 540 or so. This has got 49 million shares in the float, so it's not a thick stock. Worth keeping an eye on this. The president and CEO bought 90,000 shares at $10.63 in March of 2018. Not a very good buy on his part, but I think this has got a pretty interesting setup here. Maybe you get some follow through. I think maybe we could get a test up into the $6-7 range, $6.97 range on FET. Could be a swing, could be a day trading opportunity with volume. USAT, look, this thing gapped down huge because their accounting firm basically said they can't trust management and resigned from their position as their accountant. And Stock got pummeled because of that. My question is whether or not this is priced into the stock now. It had accounting irregularities. CFO left. Um, now you have this accounting firm, but look at where this thing pulled back to. It had a perfect double bottom test. We got a candle completely out of the lower Bollinger Band, and then BlackRock announced that they took I think a 6% position in USAT. So I thought that was kind of interesting. BlackRock, not exactly a dumb firm. Maybe this is a bit overdone. Maybe we get some kind of a bounce. Could be a high risk swing. I mean, you've got something to trade against, right? I mean, you break below 320, 315, you get out, right? Because we don't know where the bottom is, but maybe we get some kind of a bounce, snap back, get a test up into this 478 area. That's almost a buck from where it currently sits, right? So higher risk swing potentially, or day traded opportunity on USAT. INSY, actually, I think I had this one on last week. It's bumping, it's flagging out right here by the 50-day moving average. It's a cannabis play, biotech play. Cannabis, I'm seeing a lot of negativity about cannabis this weekend, overvaluations, all that stuff. Maybe we see some pressure in the cannabis stocks, but I mean, that sector has had a huge run, so it wouldn't be surprising to see that pull back. But this has already got a double bottom pattern here, popped up into the 50-day, flagging out, looking for maybe continuation and a 5 test and roll on INSY. WRTC, it's a local company to me here in Las Vegas. They got this bolo wrap thing that could compete with Taser. Big volume on Friday. I think Chardon came out with a $12.50 price target. I don't like seeing that, especially after the thing had a nice little run already. Had a pop up to $5 and then pulled back. I don't know much about Chardon, but a lot of these companies sometimes, they put a price target on a company and then all of a sudden there's a capital raise, right? This company, I think, does need cash. I actually am trying to schedule a visit to go see this company in person, kind of visit with management. But this is, I think, an interesting story. I would like to maybe dip my toe on a pullback into the 370 area, or if they actually did an offering, see where they price it and maybe partake there. But I might dip my toe to start a long-term hold position, very speculative position on this company. I think they could be a potential takeout candidate for somebody like Taser, right? So pull back to 370, 380 would be interesting maybe for a start, just a starter position. And if it pulled back to $3, maybe I'd look to add to that position. But it's a small float, 17.2 million shares in the float, brand new company. Yet to be proven, right? High risk on this one, but worth keeping an eye on. WRTC, AGRX. So, another penny play. But look at it. It's got a pretty nice looking setup here. It's above the 200-day. It's been riding this 50-day moving average. Looking for a break over 89. Take out the $1 holla. There is a big gap to fill on the daily up to about $2.50. I'm not going to say it's going to go fill that gap, but maybe get a pop up into a $1.30 area or so. Could be interesting. That's a pretty decent percentage move. Worth keeping an eye on. AGRX, OSTK. Big short position in this one. Only 8.2 million shares in the float, and it's been holding up. This one's kind of got a double bottom. We kind of got a reverse head and shoulders pattern, I guess. There's a lot going on here. Flirting with this $21 holla. If it could take 21 out with some conviction, maybe you get a pop up into the $25 area where we've got the next area of potential price resistance, and you got the 200-day overhead. But OSTK, I think, is worth keeping an eye on for a day trading opportunity. Twilio, this thing has had an amazing run. It's got earnings. I wouldn't be surprised, even if their earnings are great, if this thing pulls back. And if it does pull back and those earnings are great, it could present an opportunity for an entry for a long-term hold. The trend on this thing is beautiful. It's lower left to upper right. Maybe if it pulls back into the $88 or the 50-day $97, $98 area after a good, strong earnings report and a good guide, could present an opportunity for long-term hold entry. AMRN, this thing's been flagging out. I think they already reported. Oh, no. We've got earnings 226. So in a couple of weeks, right? So it could be waiting on earnings. You're consolidating right here at the 50-day moving average. Could be a day trading opportunity. Take out this trend line. Maybe you get a 20 test in AMRN. CRMD. This has got an interesting look. 95 million shares in the float. Consolidating here above a rising 50-day, rising 200-day. Looking for a 2 test and roll. Maybe you get a test up into... This could be a short-term day trading opportunity, not necessarily. Let's see, when do these guys report? 318. I'm not looking to hold this one overnight, but it certainly does have a pretty good looking setup on the daily. Actually got a cup with handle look too, so interesting look on CRMD. OTLK, ONS changed symbol to OT December. It's flirting with the $1 holla. I mean, you kind of got a big cup here, little cup going on here. Super thin, I think. 26 million shares in the float. Traded 250,000 shares, breaking above the 200-day, but it's already had a pretty nice run. I would actually be kind of careful with this one here. It's a biotech name. Not exactly sure why I even put this on my list. Let me see. Maybe they had some news on Friday. Worth keeping an eye on it, but it has already had a pretty nice move. Flirting with the $1 holla. Round number rolls, $1 holla, can be big. Just a day trading scalp opportunity there. All right, UTSI, I already talked about that one. SWIR reports earnings. I think this has got a pretty sweet looking setup on the daily. Consolidating just above the 50-day moving average. This has had some nice runs in the past, although it just looked like maybe they disappointed their last earnings, big gap down. But it's got a pretty interesting look. Let's see what earnings do. I wouldn't take it ahead of earnings, but if they report a good number, you might have a break back up into the 200-day moving average or so, $18. There's a long-term trend line up in the $20 area. That could be an area of resistance, but worth keeping an eye on. SWIR. MDR. So did a bit of work on this one this weekend. Now I did, full disclosure, take a small starter position. Now this is a thicker stock. McDermott International that bought Chicago Bridge and Iron. So it's the two companies combined. Been around for 100 and something plus years. They got a lot of debt. They have some issues that they have to get through, and they took over some projects from Chicago Bridge and Iron that are going to continue to lose money, it looks like. They could cut their dividend. I think they have a pretty high dividend. Or no, maybe that's the other one I'm looking at. No, I think that's MAXR. Forget that statement on that. I'm not sure about that. I'm getting it confused with another one I did some research on this weekend, and it's on this list. So MDR, I started the position because I think that this is a stock that once they get through a couple of these losing projects, they've been announcing some bid wins, some pretty significant size bid wins. I think we could get a test, close this gap on the daily. They have earnings in a couple of weeks. I'm going to hold this through earnings. If it runs into earnings, I might take it off or take some off and then look to add some after the earnings. But this is one that I think actually, in a year or so could be back up right into this $20 area. So it's a long-term hold play. It's a thicker stock, 177 million shares in the float. Had some insider buying, kind of in the 8 and change area, 7 and 8 and change area. If you back it out to the weekly time frame, It's a big spot of potential support here at $6, right? So if this thing were to pull back into the $6 area, I could look to actually add to the position there and be patient with this thing. This is one that I would just park, hold on to for a while until they get through some of these projects and start some of these new projects. They're also looking to try and sell off a couple of divisions, which could help them pay down their debt. So there's a lot going on with this company, but I like it for more of a swing or long-term hold play, and I did take a starter position last week. MAXR. So this one had a failed satellite that's what crushed this stock. They're going to get paid in full through insurance on the satellite, but their earnings are going to take a hit. But I think that's been reflected, as you can see from the chart. Now, Spruce Point Capital is basically claiming that this company is a zero, but I think they just announced a $300 million contract with either U.S. Navy or somebody. Been doing some work on this one. It looks like it's basing out. Could it pull back into the 477 area? Yeah, that's possible. But it kind of looks like we're starting to base out a bit. And new CEO, so you have new leadership there. I think this one could be a consideration. I think this is a pretty thick stock too. But worth keeping an eye on this one. Maybe for a day trading opportunity on a break over 640, 630 with some volume, or maybe as a swing or long-term hold play. This is the one that I think could cut their dividend. I think it's got a really high yield right now, about 17 or 19%, something like that. They could cut their dividend. Maybe then the stock takes a hit. But that actually probably would be a good thing for the company, good thing for the shareholders in the long run. So I'm watching this one more for a swing or long-term hold, potential bottom play. I mean, this thing has gotten absolutely destroyed, and I just don't think that they're going bankrupt. But you never know; anything's possible. INSG. So this week upcoming, Trump is supposed to sign something about China telecom equipment, basically kind of banning the U.S. from using it for telecom build out 5G. INSG could actually benefit from that. Now, this had some pretty interesting action on Friday because that news was out, and this actually pulled back and tested the 50-day moving average. I would love this thing to pull back. Now, I have a lotto piece, but I bought that lotto piece way down here. And I would love to add back to this position somewhere around $4. 380, would love it down there. Unless some really significant bad news came out on a pullback into the 50-day, 450, 425, 380. I would love to add to my position. Now, it had a beautiful run. Like I said, we've got potential price support in the 4 and change area. That's where I'd like to maybe potentially add. And that's for a swing, long-term hold play. A10. So this one, there's been rumor and speculation that they might be a takeout candidate. You had a potential golden cross at the 50-day. They reported good earnings, so I'm not exactly sure why this thing pulled back the way it did. Going to have to research it a little bit, but pulling back into the 50 and the 200-day moving average, I'm looking for this to act as support for a potential bounce. Now, if it breaks below those moving averages here, it was pretty decent volume too on this pullback. I'm going to have to research, maybe listen to the conference call and see why. But this failed to break over the $7 holla. On a pullback into the $6 range, it could be an interesting spot to take it for a swing. I wouldn't take it just because of the fact that they might be a buyout target. Unless they gave poor guidance. If they gave good guidance, I would be considering taking this thing as a swing in the $6 area. And that's it. That's my list of stocks to watch for this week. I think it'll be a pretty interesting week. Be careful out there. Make sure you have a plan for each and every trade that you take. Know your risk reward, and good luck trading this week. And I will talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.